Sienna's fingers tightened around her phone, her pulse racing as she read the anonymous message that had just appeared on her screen. Your husband, Ryan Calloway, just checked into the Beverly Hills Hotel with another woman. The words blurred for a moment as her breath hitched, her stomach twisted. She had spent months pushing aside the uneasy feeling that something was off. The hushed phone calls, the last-minute trips, the way his touch felt less familiar with each passing day. But this was undeniable. Spotted at the Polo Lounge, Sienna felt a cold shiver creep down her spine. Could Ryan, her husband, her partner, the father of the child she was carrying, really be doing this to her? The thought alone made her chest tighten. But one thing was clear. She needed to know the truth. And she wouldn't stop until she found it. Sienna Calloway had never chased fortune or fame. She had built her life with quiet determination, valuing stability and purpose over glitz and extravagance. But somehow, fate had placed her in the center of a world she never imagined being part of. She had first met Ryan at a high-profile fundraising event in Manhattan. He was magnetic, the kind of man who could command a room without even trying. A mutual friend had introduced them near the terrace bar, where city lights glittered like a million little secrets. Ryan, CEO of Calloway Properties, a luxury real estate empire, stood tall and poised, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Unlike many men born into wealth, he had built his own legacy, expanding his family's fortune with a string of high-end resorts across the country. But what had drawn him to Sienna wasn't her beauty or background. It was her unshaken composure in a world obsessed with status. And from that night forward, Ryan had made it clear he wanted her. Within a year, he proposed under the stars at a vineyard in Napa Valley, slipping a custom-designed ring onto her finger. A single, gleaming diamond, a symbol of the life they were supposed to build together. Their engagement made headlines, their picture-perfect romance gracing the pages of business magazines and social columns alike. Exotic vacations to Maui, private dinners with Hollywood's elite, a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Central Park, their sanctuary above the city. To the outside world, they were the golden couple. But behind the closed doors of their perfectly curated life, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Ryan's drive for success never slowed. His empire kept growing. His focus remained locked on the next investment, the next high-stakes deal. And with every expansion, every business trip, every late-night call, he drifted further and further from her. When Sienna found out she was pregnant, she believed, hoped that it would bring them closer. She pictured cozy evenings spent picking out nursery furniture, Ryan's hand on her belly, feeling their child move for the first time, a new beginning. But instead, he only became more distant. He smiled when she brought up baby names, but it never reached his eyes. He never came to her doctor's appointments. He was always somewhere else. Something was wrong. And deep down, she had known it for a while. One evening, she gathered the courage to ask, her voice hopeful yet unsteady. "Hey, honey, will you be able to come to the ultrasound next Friday?" Her heart ached for his answer. Ryan barely looked up from the stack of documents spread across his desk. His eyes flicked between Sienna and the papers in his hands. "I'll have to check with my assistant," he said smoothly. "It's a busy time, new property acquisitions in Miami." He punctuated his words with a polite, almost rehearsed smile. But Sienna saw it, a flicker of something behind his gaze. Guilt. That night, she tossed and turned in bed, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the growing fear that her perfect marriage might not be so perfect after all. Rumors had already started swirling in exclusive circles. Whispers that Ryan had been spotted at a private art show with a mysterious brunette, that he was extending his business trips more than necessary, that he was spending too much time in Miami, a place he once had no interest in. Sienna tried to push the doubts aside. Ryan was a man who built his career on high-level connections. His world revolved around power, influence, and relationships, and those relationships often meant rubbing shoulders with the elite. But then, a single text shattered her fragile defenses. A text that hit like a lightning bolt. "I saw your husband at the Beverly Hills Hotel. He wasn't alone." Panic surged through her veins. She stared at the cryptic message, the words flashing like a siren in her mind. Her intuition roared to life. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Sienna turned toward the mirror, her gaze falling to the curve of her growing belly. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. With a deep breath, she made a vow. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Long before she became Sienna Calloway, wife of a billionaire, she had simply been Sienna Brooks, a small-town girl with big dreams. She grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in a home filled with warmth, books, and the quiet hum of a life built on simple joys. Her father was a history professor, her mother a librarian. They had taught her that knowledge was the greatest currency, that passion and perseverance would take her further than wealth ever could. Fueled by that belief, she pursued a degree in fine arts, dreaming of one day creating community programs to bring art to underprivileged neighborhoods. That dream eventually led her to New York City, where she worked for a nonprofit dedicated to fostering creative opportunities for children. It was in that world, where art and philanthropy intertwined, that she first brushed shoulders with the ultra-wealthy. At first, she had felt out of place among the designer-clad socialites and champagne-fueled charity galas. But her sincerity set her apart. Donors and high-profile sponsors found her presence refreshing, and so did Ryan Calloway. Their first meeting had been nothing short of enchanting. Unlike the extravagance of his world, his courtship of her had been surprisingly simple. Handwritten notes, late-night walks through Central Park, fresh lilies sent to her office just because he knew they were her favorite. And just like that, she fell for him. Within a year, he proposed at a private vineyard in Napa Valley, slipping a custom-designed ring onto her finger beneath a sky full of stars. Their wedding had been the event of the year, a breathtaking ceremony at Ryan's family estate in the Hamptons. Celebrity chefs curated the menu. Exclusive magazines clamored for coverage. Thousands of white roses lined the garden, and an orchestra played beneath twinkling lights. But for all the spectacle, Sienna had only cared about one thing: the way Ryan looked at her that day. Like she was his everything. Like their love was real. But marriage to a billionaire came with complications beyond glamorous vacations and red carpet appearances. Ryan's company, Calloway International, demanded more and more of him. Even in the earliest days of their marriage, he was already being pulled away. Only a month after their wedding, he had been whisked off on a business trip, the first of many. And now, staring at that message on her phone, Sienna couldn't help but wonder, had she been blind this entire time? New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago. Always under the guise of expanding his luxury hotel empire. Sienna understood that Ryan's success came at a cost. He was building something monumental, and with that came sacrifices, long hours, constant travel, and endless networking. For a while, she had convinced herself that this was just part of the life she had signed up for, that every ambitious man had to make tough choices. And so did their families. But as the months passed, the whispers grew louder. Rumors surfaced in society circles, mentions of a mysterious brunette spotted with him at exclusive art events. Stories of long weekends in Los Angeles stretching longer than necessary. At first, she dismissed them. Tabloids thrived on gossip, especially when it came to the rich and powerful. Yet, despite Ryan returning home with extravagant gifts, a limited edition Hermes bag from Beverly Hills, a diamond tennis bracelet that reportedly cost 6 figures, Sienna couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Whenever she asked about his extended trips, his answers were vague, and he never, ever looked her in the eye when he gave them. Her pregnancy announcement had briefly reignited hope. Ryan had hugged her in silence, holding her for what felt like forever. She had taken that as happiness buried beneath the weight of professional stress. But as her belly grew, so did the distance between them. Ryan missed everything. Doctor's appointments, baby shopping, even simple moments like feeling their child's first kick. And no matter how much she tried to deny it, the truth sat heavily in her chest. Something was gravely wrong. Sienna confided in her best friend Ela, who had moved to New York to work in publishing. "I can't shake this feeling, Ela," she sighed, wrapping her hands around a warm cup of chamomile tea at a quiet cafe in Midtown. "He disappears for days, sometimes weeks, and the gifts, they don't feel like gestures of love. They feel like distractions." Ela placed a reassuring hand over hers. "Have you confronted him?" Sienna nodded slowly. "He always says it's business," she murmured. Then he changes the subject or acts too exhausted to talk. I want to believe him, but the rumors, they just keep stacking up. And honestly, sometimes I don't even know who to trust anymore. Then, the message came. The one that shattered every excuse she had made for him. I saw your husband at the Beverly Hills Hotel. He wasn't alone. She froze. Ryan had told her he was in Chicago. But if he was really in Los Angeles... The pieces clicked together like a cruel puzzle. Had he lied? Sienna's stomach twisted. The baby inside her shifted as if sensing her turmoil. She inhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her belly. I deserve answers. She refused to bring a child into a world built on lies. If Ryan was betraying her, the consequences would be unimaginable. That night, Sienna lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Ryan slept soundly beside her. He had returned from his latest business trip only hours earlier, slipping into bed without a care in the world. She watched the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, her own heart pounding. How could someone hide so much behind such a peaceful facade? How many times had he looked her in the eye and lied? She needed the truth, and she would find it, because not knowing was far more painful than whatever truth she might uncover. The next morning she made a bold decision. She picked up her phone and dialed Ryan's assistant, Andrew Cole, at Callaway International. Andrew had always been polite, distant, but polite. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she said, keeping her voice light. "I was hoping you could help me get the contact information for the property developers Ryan has been meeting with in Chicago. I'd love to send them a thank you gift for hosting him." A brief pause. "Of course, Mrs. Callaway," Andrew replied. "Let me gather that for you and email it over shortly." But even over the phone, Sienna could hear it, the hesitation. And if Ryan had been covering his tracks, there was a good chance Andrew knew. She held her breath as she waited for the email. Because whatever was in it, it would tell her everything. The email arrived faster than Sienna expected. A neatly formatted list of Chicago-based real estate developers, complete with addresses and contact numbers. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and started dialing. One by one, she made her way through the list, and one by one, they all told her the same thing. They hadn't met with Ryan that week. Some didn't even have a record of any scheduled meetings with him at all. By the 10th call, the tremble in Sienna's fingers had transformed into something else, a cold, unwavering rage. The truth was undeniable. He wasn't in Chicago, which left only one possibility. He was in Los Angeles. And he wasn't alone. When Ryan left for his next business trip, Sienna decided she needed something more than just rumors. She needed proof. She spent hours searching, old receipts, his desk drawers, his credit card statements, combing through the details of his life like an investigator piecing together a case. And then she found it. A charge for 2 first-class tickets to Los Angeles on American Airlines. Her stomach plummeted. The flight date matched exactly with the weekend Ryan had claimed to be at a business conference in Chicago. Her hands trembled as she scanned further. A dinner receipt from a 5-star restaurant in Beverly Hills, known for its candlelit tables and sweeping views of the Hollywood Hills. The total was staggering, and the champagne alone cost more than what some families made in a month. Sienna felt physically ill. She had believed him. She had trusted him. And yet, while she sat alone in their penthouse, waiting for his return, Ryan had been across the country, wining and dining another woman. That night, she sat in the dim glow of their Manhattan skyline, the city lights stretching beneath her like a sea of illusions. The life she thought she had, the marriage she thought she had, was unraveling, and she refused to ignore it any longer. The next morning, she made a discreet phone call to a private investigator. "Mrs. Callaway," the woman's voice was calm, professional. "I'll need every detail you have. Dates, locations, credit card transactions, anything that can establish a pattern." Sienna gripped the phone tighter. "Whatever you need, I'll send it." She could hear the investigator, Jade Monroe, scribbling notes on the other end of the line. "I'll get to work immediately," Jade assured her. "Stay strong." Sienna exhaled shakily. She wasn't sure how strong she could be. While she waited for Jade's findings, Sienna played the role of the perfect wife. She went through the motions, plastering on a strained smile, pretending like everything was fine. But every time Ryan came home, every time he kissed her forehead and placed a hand on her growing belly, telling her vague stories about exciting new expansions, Her heart broke a little more. Everything was a lie. A carefully constructed facade, just like his empire. Then one evening, fate intervened. Ryan's phone vibrated on the marble kitchen counter, buzzing softly against the stone. Sienna froze. Ryan was in the shower. His phone, which was usually glued to his hand, had been left charging. Her pulse hammered. Should she look? Would she regret it? Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she took a deep breath and picked up the phone. A text notification flashed across the lock screen. Lauren. Sienna's heart stopped. Her hands shook as she tried the passcode. Ryan's birthday. Incorrect. Her birthday. Wrong again. She took a slow breath and typed in their wedding date. The screen unlocked. Her stomach twisted as she scrolled through the unread messages. Lauren, missing you already. When can we see each other again? The suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel was divine. Next time, I'm picking the restaurant. Think of me when you're lying next to her. Sienna couldn't breathe. Her eyes flicked to the message timestamps. They lined up perfectly with the weekends Ryan had claimed to be in Chicago. Her vision blurred as she scrolled further. A picture. Lauren, smiling in front of the Hollywood sign. Another. Lauren in an elegant black dress, posing on a hotel bed with champagne in hand. Sienna's entire body went cold. It was true. All of it. And now she had the proof. Sienna was entitled to every single one of these revelations. Her intuition had been right. It was far worse than she had imagined. When Ryan stepped out of the shower, steam curling around him, she barely managed to place his phone back on the counter in time. Then she fled to the bedroom, her chest tight, her pulse thundering in her ears. She forced herself to breathe. She needed undeniable proof, something he couldn't explain away. And she needed the perfect moment to confront him. Jade Monroe worked fast. Within a week, she delivered a thick folder filled with damning evidence. Photographs, receipts, timestamps, everything meticulously documented, a paper trail of betrayal. Sienna flipped through the pages, her stomach twisting. Ryan and Lauren, hand in hand, strolling through Rodeo Drive. A candlelit dinner at one of Los Angeles' most exclusive restaurants. Entering a Chanel boutique where he had likely showered his mistress with expensive gifts. Her hands shook as she turned another page. There he was, Ryan, her husband, smiling, his arm wrapped around Lauren's waist as though she belonged to him. Lauren was stunning, tall, brunette, effortlessly elegant, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a world of wealth and privilege. Sienna felt like she was going to be sick. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. Not when she was carrying their child. That evening, Ryan was out again, claiming to be at a business dinner. Sienna couldn't stand the suffocating walls of their penthouse any longer. She grabbed her coat and wandered into a small park a few blocks away. Couples strolled hand in hand. Parents pushed strollers. Children giggled on the playground, their laughter drifting through the crisp autumn air. The scent of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor curled around her, grounding her in the present. But inside, she felt completely alone. She had fallen into a gilded trap. A pregnant wife, overshadowed by a man who had woven an intricate web of lies. She sat on a bench and stared at the city skyline, her thoughts dark and relentless. Ryan's face flashed in her memory, the way he had lit up when she told him she was pregnant. Had he already been with Lauren then? Had their affair begun before she conceived? The thought made her blood boil. She imagined him whispering sweet nothings to Lauren, planning romantic weekends, indulging in extravagant gestures that had once been hers. The pain was unbearable, but beneath the sorrow, something else took root: resolve. This wasn't just about whether Ryan was cheating. He was. The real question was, what was she going to do about it? The next morning, her phone rang. Jade's voice was steady, but there was something serious in her tone. Mrs. Calloway, I found something else. Sienna braced herself. What is it? Your husband and Miss Lauren Walsh visited a private real estate firm in Beverly Hills. Sienna's grip on the phone tightened. A firm that caters exclusively to high-net-worth clients, the kind of place people go when they're purchasing luxury properties, discreetly. A cold weight settled in Sienna's chest. He's buying her a place to live. As of now, I can't confirm if the property is in her name or if he's planning something long-term, Jade continued. But based on the agent's profile, it's definitely high-end. I'll keep digging. Sienna closed her eyes. A fling was one thing. But this? Ryan wasn't just cheating, he was building a future for her. Lauren wasn't just some distraction, she was a second life. He was carefully crafting behind Sienna's back. "I'm sorry," Jade added, her voice laced with sympathy. But Sienna wasn't crying anymore. Her jaw clenched, her fingers curled into fists. If Ryan wanted to lie, fine. Let's see how he fares when I confront him in person. That night, as Ryan packed for yet another trip, Sienna stood in the doorway of their walk-in closet, arms folded tightly across her chest. Her heart thundered, but her voice was steady. "Where are you going this time, Ryan?" "Where are you going this time?" Sienna asked, her arms crossed, voice calm but sharp. Ryan didn't hesitate. "Chicago," he said smoothly, zipping up his leather duffel bag. "Big investor meeting, then a quick stop in San Francisco. I'll probably be gone for a week." Sienna studied him carefully. The slight twitch in his left eyebrow, the same lie, a new city, a new excuse, but still a lie. "San Francisco too?" she asked, tilting her head. "Just an overnight visit?" "Yeah, nothing major," he replied, barely glancing at her. She forced a sweet smile. "I see. Well, be safe." For a brief moment his eyes darted away, as if expecting more questions, but instead she simply nodded and walked out of the closet. Behind her she could feel his relief. He had no idea. She was planning a trip of her own. The next morning, Sienna called Jade Monroe. "The plan is simple," she said, her voice steady. "I'm going to follow him." With Jade's help, Sienna booked a first-class seat on the same flight Ryan had purchased. Under a carefully arranged alias, she ensured he wouldn't see her name on the passenger list. By the time she arrived at LAX, she was dressed to blend in, a loose sweater that concealed her pregnancy, dark jeans, and comfortable sneakers. She stayed on edge, moving carefully through the airport, slipping into the VIP lounge under the false name Jade had arranged for her. And then she saw him. Ryan. Standing near the gate, phone pressed to his ear, speaking softly into the receiver. Sienna's pulse pounded. She knew exactly who he was talking to. His attention was locked on the conversation, so locked in that he never even glanced around. Her fingers curled into fists. When his group boarded, she waited until the final call before slipping into her seat, on the opposite end of first class. For 7 agonizing hours, she sat there, hands resting over her belly, heart racing with every passing second. The baby shifted inside her, a quiet reminder. This wasn't just about her heartbreak anymore. This was about ensuring a future free from Ryan's lies. The plane touched down in Los Angeles on a crisp, golden morning. Sienna hung back, watching as Ryan stepped into the arrivals area. And then, she saw it. His face lit up. Lauren rushed toward him, throwing her arms around his neck. Ryan held her close, whispering something against her ear. Lauren laughed, a soft, delighted sound. Sienna's stomach twisted. Even knowing the truth, even after seeing the messages, nothing prepared her for this moment. She tightened her grip on her carry-on and forced herself to move. Jade was already on the ground, positioned strategically with cameras, capturing every damning moment. Together, they followed from a distance as Ryan and Lauren stepped into a sleek black limousine, which pulled away from the airport and disappeared onto the highway. Sienna slid into the back seat of a discreet, prearranged car with a local driver Jade had secured. The city passed by in a blur, palm trees swaying against the blue sky, sunlit streets filled with tourists and locals alike. Once, she had imagined visiting Los Angeles with her husband. She had pictured holding hands while walking along the Santa Monica Pier, laughing over breakfast at an Ocean View cafe, stealing kisses beneath the Hollywood Hills. Instead, she was following him, watching him do all of that with someone else. The cruel irony felt like a knife to her chest, but she wasn't here to grieve. She was here to get the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Their chase led them through Beverly Hills, past high-end boutiques and gated mansions, until the limousine finally pulled into the driveway of a 5-star luxury hotel. The Beverly Hills Hotel. Sienna's hands clenched into fists. She thought back to the anonymous text that had shattered everything. Seen at the Beverly Hills Hotel. From the back seat she watched through tinted windows as Ryan stepped out of the limo and turned. He reached for Lauren's hand. Lauren, dressed in a flowing designer dress, sunglasses perched atop her sleek brunette waves, smiled up at him as he murmured something against her ear. Her laughter rang out, carefree, as if she had no idea that the man she was with had a pregnant wife waiting at home. From a few cars back, Jade snapped photo after photo, documenting every damning moment. And Sienna? She sat in silence, watching the man she had loved for years become a stranger before her eyes. This was it, the final, undeniable truth, and soon, Ryan Calloway would realize that the woman he had underestimated was done playing his game. Sienna could barely keep her breathing steady. They're really here together. She whispered the words to herself, as if saying them out loud would somehow make the truth more bearable. Some part of her, a tiny, foolish part, had hoped that this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some rational, even absurdly complicated, explanation for everything. But there wasn't. This was undeniable. The driver turned to her, voice low. "Shall I wait here, ma'am?" Sienna swallowed the lump in her throat and gave a small nod. They sat in silence for a stretch of time, until a soft knock on the window pulled her back into reality. Jade slid into the back seat beside her, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. "Got everything," the investigator murmured, flipping the camera screen toward her. Sienna's breath caught in her chest, photo after photo, Ryan and Lauren checking into the Beverly Hills Hotel. And the final, most damning detail? They had registered under the name Mr. and Mrs. Calloway. The final dagger. Ryan hadn't just betrayed her, he had given his mistress her name. A full day passed in a haze of heartbreak and planning. Sienna stayed in a modest boutique hotel in West Hollywood, her mind spinning between devastation and cold, calculated resolve. She needed to figure out exactly how to confront him, and whether to confront Lauren as well. Jade urged her to be methodical, to think carefully, now that she had all the proof she needed for legal action. But Sienna wasn't thinking about divorce settlements or court filings. She wasn't thinking about lawyers. She needed something more. She needed closure. She needed to look Ryan in the eye and watch his world crumble, as he realized that his pregnant wife had followed him all the way to Los Angeles. The next evening, Jade gave her the update. Ryan had made dinner reservations for 2 at one of Beverly Hills' most exclusive restaurants. A place where reservations took weeks to secure, a place Sienna had always wanted to try. The irony was almost laughable. It was the perfect setting for a confrontation. Sienna dressed carefully, a sleek, elegant black dress that hugged her baby bump discreetly. Nothing flashy, just enough to blend in, yet undeniable in presence. She arrived early, chose a dimly lit corner table, one that offered her a clear view of the entrance but kept her partially hidden. Her heart pounded violently. She sipped water, her fingers jittering against the glass. And then, she saw them. Lauren walked in first, wearing red. Heads turned as she passed. Ryan followed, dressed in a tailored navy suit, exuding effortless charm. He guided Lauren to their reserved table just a few feet away from where Sienna sat, completely oblivious to her presence. Tears burned at the edges of Sienna's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she watched as he leaned in, watched as he whispered something against Lauren's ear. That tilt of his head, the same one he had always given her when they shared inside jokes, when he made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. Only now, it wasn't hers anymore. The warmth she had once felt seeing that gesture? Now it was nothing but poison. 20 minutes passed. Food arrived. Wine was poured. Laughter spilled across the table. And that's when Sienna stood up. Her entire body buzzed with adrenaline, her pulse thundering in her ears. With measured steps, she crossed the room. Halfway there, Ryan glanced up, his brow furrowed slightly, as if his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. Then, realization hit. The color drained from his face. Lauren noticed the shift in his expression and turned just as Sienna stepped into their space. Dead silence. Every conversation around them seemed to fade. For a moment, no one spoke. The air between them crackled, heavy, suffocating, inevitable. Sienna's voice was steady, dangerously calm. "Ryan." It wasn't a question, it was a reckoning. Lauren frowned, confused, glancing between them. Ryan still hadn't moved. Sienna let her eyes drift over to Lauren, her expression unreadable. Then back to Ryan. She took a slow breath. "I see you're enjoying your trip to Chicago," she said smoothly. Then, tilting her head, she added, "Or was it San Francisco? I forget which lie you told me this time." Lauren stiffened. Her gaze flickered towards Sienna's pronounced baby bump, realization dawning like a slap to the face. For the first time, she understood exactly who was standing in front of her. Ryan opened his mouth, but there was no way out of this. And Sienna? She was done letting him control the narrative. Sienna stood tall, her very pregnant figure unmistakable, her wedding band identical to Ryan's glinting under the dim restaurant lighting. A crackling silence filled the air. Other diners had noticed. Some leaned in, pretending to focus on their meals while clearly listening. Ryan's lips parted, but no words came out. He had no excuse for this. Sienna felt something unexpected rise within her. Confidence. She turned to Lauren, her voice dangerously calm. "So this is Lauren," she mused, eyes locking onto the woman like a blade. Lauren flinched but didn't look away. "Let me guess," Sienna continued, tilting her head slightly. "You had no idea he was married? Or did you?" Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it again. Guilt. A flicker of hesitation passed through her expression, just enough for Sienna to know the truth. Maybe Lauren hadn't known at first, but at some point she had chosen not to care. The weight of the confrontation settled over the restaurant. A place once filled with hushed conversations and candlelit romance had transformed into a stage, and Sienna was done playing the silent, betrayed wife. The time for illusions was over. Ryan looked ashen, his usual composure shattered. His hands clenched into fists, jaw tight as if he were physically fighting for words. Lauren, for her part, looked trapped, her manicured fingers gripping the edge of the table, eyes darting between Sienna and Ryan, searching for an escape. Sienna refused to look away. "I followed you to Los Angeles," she said, voice steady. Lauren stiffened. Sienna nodded toward the woman's left hand, where an unmistakable engagement ring rested. "So," she continued, arching a brow, "are congratulations in order for the happy couple?" Ryan's entire body tensed. Lauren paled. He reached out, his voice a hushed plea. "Sienna, please, not here." Sienna ignored him. She turned to Lauren instead. "Did he mention that his wife is pregnant with his child?" Lauren froze. "Or did he conveniently leave that part out?" Lauren's lips parted. She stammered. He told me you weren't in the picture anymore, that you." Her voice trailed off, flustered, exposed. Sienna let out a short, bitter laugh. "Well," she said, resting a protective hand over her belly. "Guess what? I'm very much in the picture. And so is our unborn child." A ripple of discomfort spread through the restaurant. Nearby diners exchanged awkward glances, some riveted by the unfolding drama, others unsure whether to stay or quietly slip out. A manager hovered near the bar, torn between intervening and letting the spectacle continue. Then, suddenly, Ryan pushed back his chair and stood. He grabbed Sienna's wrist, his grip firm but not rough. His voice was low, desperate. "Let's step outside," he hissed, barely containing his frustration. "We can talk about this in private." Sienna yanked her hand free, her voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp with betrayal. "You lost the right to privacy the moment you decided to parade your mistress around Los Angeles," she spat. Lauren shot up from her seat, tears forming in her eyes. "Ryan, you told me." But Ryan silenced her with a sharp, furious glare, one hand pressing against his temple as though this entire situation was her fault. For a moment, the three of them stood locked in a silent war, the tension unbearable. Then, finally, Sienna turned on her heel. She strode toward the exit, head high, back straight. She wouldn't give Ryan the satisfaction of seeing her break. Behind her, she heard his footsteps following. She stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool Los Angeles night air wrapping around her. But there was no comfort here, only the cold bite of reality. Behind her, Ryan exhaled a shaky, breathless sound. "Sienna, I can explain." She let out a hollow laugh before turning to face him, eyes burning with unshed tears. "Explain what? That you destroyed everything?" "Explain what?" Sienna's voice trembled, not with weakness, but with the sheer weight of her rage. "That you've been cheating on me? Lying to me? Humiliating me?" Ryan flinched but said nothing. "Explain how you were planning to buy her a house, all while your pregnant wife sat at home, wondering why you couldn't bother to show up for a single ultrasound." He took a step closer, the glow of the streetlights casting sharp shadows across his face. For the first time, she noticed the deep-set lines of stress, the exhaustion etched into his features. "It's complicated," Ryan said, voice tight. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the business expansion, my parents' expectations, the board." Then, as if remembering, he glanced over his shoulder toward the restaurant, where Lauren stood frozen in the doorway. And Lauren? Sienna pressed, her tone cutting. What was she, Ryan? Just a mistake? He raked a shaky hand through his hair. I never meant to hurt you, he murmured. I needed an escape. Things got overwhelming, and yes, maybe I found comfort in Lauren, but it was never meant to last. Her voice was sharp, mocking. Ryan exhaled. Sienna. An escape? She snapped. Her fury burned hotter now, raw and unfiltered. You destroyed our marriage for a cheap thrill? A flicker of something, guilt or maybe fear, flashed in his eyes. I swear, Sienna, I still love you, he said, voice almost desperate. It got out of hand. His gaze flicked back toward Lauren, who hovered at the restaurant entrance, watching with wide, uncertain eyes. I told her I wanted out, Ryan added quickly. But she threatened to go public. Sienna's breath caught, and then she laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. So now you're blaming her? Lauren's expression crumbled. Sienna shook her head, her disgust only deepening. You took her on romantic getaways, she continued, her voice dangerously calm. Booked 5-star suites under our last name. Bought her designer gifts. Played house with her while your actual wife sat at home, pregnant, wondering why the hell her husband was never around. Her eyes burned into him. Who exactly do you think you're fooling? Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. And in that moment, Sienna knew. There was nothing left to salvage. The man standing before her was someone who would twist the truth to protect himself, no matter how many people he hurt in the process. And she was done letting him control the story. A flash of movement caught her eye. Sienna turned, spotting Jade across the street. She had stepped into the glow of a street lamp, camera in hand, capturing the final confrontation from a distance. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sienna felt grounded in reality. Someone else had witnessed it. Someone else had proof. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. This was real. The weight of it all settled deep in her chest. And suddenly she couldn't stand here another second. She turned away, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. We're done, Ryan. His eyes widened in panic. Sienna, wait. I'm going back to the hotel, she said coldly. You can stay with Lauren or whoever else you want, but I'm done being tangled in your web of lies. He grabbed for her wrist, but she jerked away. His voice cracked. Don't leave me. A tear finally slipped free, trailing down her cheek. She wiped it away. You and I both know, she whispered, this can't be fixed. Then she walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone in the middle of Beverly Hills, looking as uncertain and frantic as the man who had once sworn to love her forever. The bright city lights blurred in her vision as the final shards of heartbreak pierced her. And then, a flutter inside her belly. Her baby. A quiet, steady reminder of what truly mattered now. Whether Ryan let her go or not, she was going to fight for a future free of deception. It was time to sever the toxic ties that bound her to a man who had so carelessly shattered her trust. The next morning, Sienna woke in her modest boutique hotel, her mind still reeling from the confrontation. She rolled over and checked her phone. A flood of missed calls. A dozen frantic texts. Ryan, Sienna, please. Pick up. I messed up. I know I did, but please, don't do this. We can fix this. Just talk to me. Her stomach churned. His messages weren't apologies. They were desperate attempts to regain control. And she refused to give him that power. Taking a deep breath, she summoned Jade and her driver to meet her in the hotel lobby. Tucked into a quiet corner beside a potted palm, she made her decision. I'm going back to New York, she said, voice steady but exhausted. Jade studied her carefully. Are you sure? Sienna nodded. I'll let my lawyers handle the rest, she continued, exhaling slowly. I have everything I need. Proof for the divorce, custody arrangements, and whatever else I need to protect myself and my child. Ryan could beg all he wanted, but he had already made his choice, and now she was making hers. Jade gave Sienna a long, measured look before nodding. You've been incredibly brave, she said, sympathy softening her voice. And if you need help tracking assets, ensuring a fair settlement, anything, I'm here. Sienna exhaled slowly. She had never imagined hiring a private investigator to confirm her husband's betrayal, but in the end, it had been her lifeline. Thank you, she whispered. Then, with a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders. I guess it's time for me to stand on my own now. Before she left Los Angeles, Sienna had one final thing to do. She texted Ryan, "Meet me at the hotel cafe. One last conversation." She made it clear. His desperate attempts at reconciliation were pointless. When he arrived, he looked wrecked. Dark circles rimmed his eyes. His usual polished, put-together appearance was gone. His shirt slightly wrinkled, his jaw unshaven. He looked like a man whose carefully curated life had imploded overnight. The moment he saw her, he rushed forward, reaching for her hands. "Sienna, please. We have years together." He hesitated, his gaze flickering to her pregnant belly. "We have a child on the way. Let's not throw that away." Sienna pulled back, her spine rigid. "Stop," she said quietly. She met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm filing for divorce." Ryan's entire body stiffened. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore," she continued, her voice steady, "except for what's necessary for the baby. And let me be clear, I will never forgive you." A muscle in his jaw clenched. "Sienna, for the lies," she pressed, "for the humiliation, for making me doubt my own sanity." Ryan's voice cracked. "I'll give you anything you want," he pleaded. "The New York penthouse, the house in the Hamptons, financial support, anything. Just don't shut me out of our child's life." Sienna's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's for the courts to decide." Ryan swallowed hard, his desperation mounting. "Money can't fix this, Ryan," she said coldly. "I'm not your puppet." She watched the realization settle into his expression, the full weight of what he had done finally sinking in. Maybe in that moment he truly understood, but she couldn't find it in herself to care. The heartbreak was too raw. Ryan made one last attempt. "My parents," he swallowed. "They'll be devastated. The Calloway name." Sienna laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Stop using your family name as a shield," she snapped. "That's all you've ever done, Ryan. Hide. Behind your wealth, behind your father's empire, behind the Calloway name." She took a step back. "You made your bed," she said, voice even. "Now you can lie in it." Ryan stared at her, his expression one of pure desperation. But Sienna didn't care anymore. The man in front of her was not the man she had married. He wasn't her partner. He wasn't the man she had once imagined growing old with. He was a liar, a coward, and she refused to let him have any more control over her life. With a final, unwavering look, she turned and walked away. Ryan didn't follow. He just stood there, frozen, as she left him behind for good. That afternoon, Sienna boarded a flight back to New York. Tears burned at the edges of her eyes as the plane soared above the clouds. Memories flooded in, their wedding dance, their whispered promises, the future they were supposed to have. She let the tears fall, silently, each drop washing away fragments of the illusion she had once cherished. She felt hollow, but beneath the grief something else stirred, clarity. For the first time in a long time, she could see her path forward. One without Ryan, one where she and her baby came first. When she landed in New York, her phone exploded with notifications. The media had already caught on. Photos of her confrontation with Ryan and Lauren at the restaurant had surfaced. Some paparazzi had evidently captured the scene from a distance, turning it into headline news. Billionaire heir caught in LA with Mistress. Pregnant wife confronts him in public showdown. Sienna sighed, bracing herself for the onslaught. She wasn't naive. She knew how the tabloids worked, especially when the Calloway name was involved. She ignored Ryan's dozens of missed calls and frantic text messages, all filled with apologies and half-hearted explanations. "Ryan, Sienna, please. Pick up. I messed up, I know I did, but please, don't do this. We can fix this. Just talk to me." She didn't answer. Instead, she went straight to her friend Ila's loft in Soho, far from the penthouse she had once called home. The moment she walked in, Isla wrapped her in a tight hug. "Thank God," she murmured. "I was worried sick." Sienna let out a shuddering breath. "You're safe now," Isla assured her. "Rest. Breathe. We'll figure everything out." Over steaming cups of herbal tea, Sienna finally let it all out. The betrayal, the confrontation, the fear of starting over. And as she sat in her friend's quiet, sunlit loft for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Tears streamed down Sienna's face as she let it all out. The betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer depth of the deception. Across from her, Isla squeezed her hand tightly, her voice firm yet gentle. "This is not your fault," she whispered. "Don't let him, or anyone else, make you feel like you did something wrong." Sienna swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to swallow her whole. And then, a small movement, a soft, steady kick from the baby inside her. Her breath hitched. A reminder. This wasn't just about her. She had someone else depending on her now, and she vowed Ryan would never use their child as a pawn in his twisted game. If that meant going to war with the Calloway family over finances or custody, then so be it. Within days, Sienna hired the best divorce attorneys in Manhattan, a powerhouse firm known for their ruthless expertise in high-profile cases. The lead attorney, Miranda Lowe, had a reputation for tearing apart men like Ryan in courtrooms. After reviewing the evidence, Miranda had only one thing to say. You have the upper hand. Jade's meticulous investigation had built a bulletproof case, photos, text messages, financial records, everything they needed to bury Ryan in court. A mix of relief and fear churned in Sienna's stomach. She was stepping into a battle that would turn the media spotlight into a searing glare, exposing every inch of her personal life. But after everything she had endured, she was done hiding. Meanwhile, Ryan was in full damage control mode. Through mutual connections, Sienna heard the whispers. His father, William Calloway, had summoned him for a private meeting, furious over the media scandal. Investors were rattled. Shareholders wanted answers. And Lauren? Rumor had it she was holed up in a discreet hotel, no longer at the Beverly Hills Hotel, presumably reeling from the fallout. Sienna felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a quiet, grim acknowledgement that karma had arrived. In the weeks following the confrontation, Sienna focused on building her new life. With Ila's help, she moved into a modest but cozy Tribeca apartment, a far cry from the lavish penthouse she had once shared with Ryan. But that was the point. She needed a fresh start, a place that felt like hers, and for the first time in a long time, she could breathe. It didn't take long for the Calloway family to strike back. Within days, their lawyers bombarded Sienna's legal team with settlement proposals, desperately trying to negotiate behind closed doors. They were desperate to contain the scandal. But Miranda wasn't having it. She sat across from Sienna, flipping through files with a sharp smile. They'll try to paint you as a gold digger, she warned, or claim your mental state is compromised to fight for custody. Sienna's hands curled into fists. But we won't back down, Miranda continued. You're entitled to a fair settlement, and given the circumstances, you have every right to request full custody. Sienna took a slow, steady breath. I won't let them manipulate this, she said, her voice filled with quiet steel. I want what's best for my baby. Over the next few days, negotiations turned into war. Ryan reached out personally, trying to buy her silence. He offered millions in settlements if she would agree to shared custody and sign an NDA. Sienna refused. She had already been silenced enough. What good would a gag order do now? The world already knew the truth. And behind the scenes, the media was tearing Ryan apart. Every tabloid, every news site had the same story. Billionaire heir exposed, the Calloway scandal unfolds. Pregnant wife betrayed, public showdown in LA. Ryan was no longer the golden son of the Calloway empire. He was the unfaithful heir. His father, William Calloway, was forced to make a public statement condemning his son's behavior in a desperate attempt to control the damage. But it wasn't enough. The Calloway International stock took a hit. Investors were pulling out of deals. Major partners were walking away. Ryan was scrambling to salvage the company's image. And Sienna? She refused to take pleasure in his downfall. Instead, she focused on what mattered. Not revenge, not destruction, but freedom. For herself, for her child. And she wasn't stopping now. Ethan's heartbreak might have been overshadowed by his arrogance, but the fact remained. He was still the father of her child. And for that, a small part of Sienna grieved. But another part? That part knew he deserved every consequence of his actions. And so did Lauren. In a dramatic twist, Lauren filed a lawsuit against Ryan, claiming emotional manipulation, broken promises of marriage, and psychological distress. The tabloids erupted with the new scandal. Some labeled Lauren a gold digger. Others painted her as a naive young woman manipulated by a powerful man. Sienna? She had no sympathy. Lauren had known Ryan was married. She had either deluded herself on purpose or had been fueled by greed. Either way, this was the price she had to pay. The divorce negotiations grew tense. During one meeting, Ryan's attorneys actually tried to argue that Sienna's public confrontation in Los Angeles had damaged his reputation. Miranda Lowe laughed outright. Your client engaged in public adultery, she said, crossing her arms. used his family name to book luxury suites for his mistress. She gestured toward the stack of evidence on the table. Photos, messages, receipts. My client simply uncovered the truth, she finished. She smirked. You'll have a hard time convincing any judge that she's the guilty party. Ryan sat stone-faced, his hands clenched together. He knew he was losing, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Late at night, Ryan would still call. Sometimes Sienna picked up. Other times, she let it go to voicemail. When she did answer, all she heard was his tired sighs, his broken apologies strung together in words that meant nothing. Each conversation left her feeling emotionally drained. But she tried to remain civil. After all, they had a child to think about. A child who would soon enter the world. And she refused to let hatred poison the possibility of a future co-parenting arrangement, if co-parenting was even possible. Amidst the swirling chaos, Sienna leaned on the people who mattered. She kept moving forward, for herself, for her baby. She attended every doctor's appointment, her heart fluttering at the sound of her child's steady heartbeat on the ultrasound. She took up prenatal yoga, learning to breathe through the stress, to release the tension in her body. For the first time in months, she felt peaceful, even if only for fleeting moments. And then, one afternoon, Isla hosted a baby shower for her. A small, intimate gathering in her Soho loft. No flashy parties, no photographers, just people who truly cared. They brought thoughtful, practical gifts. Tiny onesies, soft blankets, baby books. Sienna's eyes burned with unshed tears as she realized she might be doing this alone, but she wasn't powerless. She was going to build a loving home for her child, with or without Ryan's involvement. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt strong enough to do it. While Sienna prepared herself for single motherhood, the Calloway family empire began to crumble. Whispers circulated that William Calloway was furious with Ryan, claiming his reckless behavior had cost them business alliances that had stood for decades. Real estate deals fell apart. Board members started pushing for Ryan to step down as CEO, arguing that his scandal had permanently tainted the company's reputation. The affair that Ryan had so desperately tried to hide had now become the very thing that threatened to destroy his empire. Karma, indeed. Every time Sienna glanced at the business news, Calloway International's stock had dipped a little further. Sponsors withdrew from their high-profile charity events. Investors pulled out of deals. Even the high-society friends who had once flocked to Ryan's extravagant parties were now keeping their distance. Sienna watched it all unfold, feeling a quiet, bittersweet vindication. She had never wished for Ryan's professional downfall, but she understood now. Betraying your spouse, especially in such a public way, came with consequences, and the bigger you were, the harder you fell. Ryan had flaunted his mistress for the world to see, and now, everything was unraveling. Like an avalanche, unstoppable in its destruction. The final divorce hearing arrived on a brisk Manhattan morning, just 1 month shy of Sienna's due date. She stepped out of a black SUV in front of the courthouse, cameras flashing all around her. A swarm of reporters shouted questions, their voices colliding in a chaotic mess. But Sienna didn't flinch. She wore a simple, elegant maternity dress, her head held high, her hands steady as she clutched a folder of legal documents. She refused to hide her face. She had been humiliated enough. This time, she would face the world with dignity. Inside the courtroom, Ryan was already seated. He looked hollowed out, his once powerful frame lost inside a designer suit that no longer fit as well as it used to. Sienna felt nothing, no sympathy, no anger, just the weight of finality pressing down on her. This was the moment she had dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. The moment her marriage would officially end. The legal proceedings began, property settlements, custody arrangements. The back and forth between lawyers felt like a war of paperwork and formalities, but Sienna's heart pounded with every word. Miranda Lowe, fierce and unwavering, laid out the damning evidence, the affair, the deception, the emotional distress Ryan had caused. The judge listened intently, no doubt aware of the media frenzy swirling outside these courtroom walls. Ryan's attorneys tried to mitigate the damage, arguing that Ryan deeply regretted his actions, that he wanted to be a part of his child's life. Sienna's eyes burned, but her expression remained composed as she spoke. She recounted the months of deception, the humiliation, the betrayal, and then The ruling. Sienna was awarded full custody of their unborn child. Ryan would be granted structured visitation rights, pending a psychological evaluation. She received a significant share of marital assets and monthly support that ensured she and her baby would never go without. The judge's gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. Ryan rose to his feet, his expression filled with remorse. For the first time in months, he finally looked her in the eye. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never meant for it to get this far." For a fleeting second, Sienna considered whether to offer him a kind word, but the wounds were too fresh. The image of him kissing Lauren at that restaurant in Los Angeles, whispering sweet nothings in her ear, was still burned into her mind. She exhaled, turning toward the exit. "Goodbye, Ryan." And just like that, she walked away. The moment she stepped outside, a sea of flashing cameras erupted. Microphones were thrust in her direction. "Mrs. Calloway, do you have a statement?" "Sienna, will you be co-parenting with Ryan? How do you feel about his downfall?" She ignored them all. With stoic grace, she made her way to the waiting vehicle. Inside, Ayla reached for her hand. Sienna let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding with exhaustion. "It's over," she whispered. Or at least, the marriage was. In the weeks that followed, Ryan's downfall only worsened. The Calloway International Board voted to temporarily remove him as CEO, launching an internal investigation into the misuse of company funds. His father, William Calloway, openly chastised him in the press. "Ryan's behavior does not reflect the values of our family or our company," he had stated coldly, distancing himself from his own son. Deals collapsed. Investors pulled out. The very empire Ryan had prioritized over his marriage was now crumbling at his feet. And Lauren? Rumor had it she had quietly left New York, seeking a fresh start far away from the scandal. Sienna felt no satisfaction in their downfall. Only a bitter truth: betrayal has consequences. And the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Meanwhile, Sienna moved forward. She poured her energy into preparing for her baby's arrival, transforming the second bedroom of her Tribeca apartment into a soft, neutral-tone nursery. She painted the walls herself, assembled the crib, folded tiny onesies, letting herself dream of the future again. And for the first time since the scandal had broken, she felt free. Then, one night, the contractions started. She barely had time to grab her hospital bag before Ayla rushed her to the ER. Hours of pain and exhaustion blurred together, and then, the first sound of her baby's cry. Tears streamed down Sienna's face as the nurse placed her tiny daughter in her arms. She was perfect. Her entire world shifted in that moment. Every tragedy she had endured, every betrayal, every heartbreak, it no longer mattered. She looked down at her baby's face and whispered the name she had chosen alone: Grace. Because no matter what had happened before, this child would only know love. And as Sienna held her daughter close, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: they were going to be just fine. The hospital room glowed softly under the dim lights. Ayla and a few of Sienna's closest friends stood by, tears of joy shimmering in their eyes. A moment of pure peace. A moment that belonged only to her and Grace. Ryan had tried to visit, sending messages, calling, begging to see his daughter, but Sienna, still recovering, wasn't ready. Instead, she sent him a single picture. Grace, carefully swaddled, her tiny features delicate and perfect. There was no denying it. She had inherited traces of her father. Ryan's replies were filled with longing and regret. But Sienna remained cautious. There were no illusions of reconciliation. Not now. Not ever. If Ryan wanted to be in Grace's life, he would have to prove he was stable, prove he was committed, and earn his place, not through money or apologies, but through actions. In the quiet hours of her hospital stay, Sienna gazed at her daughter. Her heart swelled with something stronger than pain, stronger than betrayal. A love so fierce, so unbreakable, that nothing else mattered. The weight in her chest, the anger, the grief, the heartbreak, it lifted, replaced by a conviction that she and Grace would flourish. There would be love in her child's life. A love untainted by deception. A love that money could never buy. Days later, Sienna stepped out of the hospital with Grace nestled safely in her arms. The crisp New York air brushed against her skin. A few reporters still lingered outside, eager for a glimpse of the Calloway heir. Sienna didn't stop, didn't acknowledge the flashing cameras or the murmurs. She just held Grace closer, shielding her from the world. This was her family now, her new beginning. Ryan's fall from grace had been steep. His mistress filed lawsuits. His company bled money. His family turned against him. Karma had collected its debts. And yet Sienna refused to cling to anger. She wasn't here to watch him fall. She was here to rise, to build a new life, to teach Grace the values of honesty, resilience, and compassion. If Ryan truly wanted redemption, he would have to earn it the hard way. And so ends this tumultuous tale. A seemingly perfect marriage unraveled by lies and betrayal, a powerful man brought down by his own choices, and a woman who, in her darkest moments, found the strength to stand tall. Sienna's journey proves that no one is invincible when the truth comes calling. That even in heartbreak, there is power. Even in loss, there is freedom. Even in destruction, there is rebirth. And sometimes, the end of a love story is just the beginning of something greater. If you were moved by Sienna's resilience and the twists that shaped her fate, please consider supporting our channel. Like this video if you believe in the power of truth and perseverance. Share it with friends who love intense, dramatic sagas. Subscribe for more gripping stories of heartbreak, strength, and redemption. Your support allows us to keep telling stories that remind us all, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes.